Hello everyone. I want to do a video on gold investments. And the reason is because there's lots of gun channels out there, right, that I follow that have been really pushing the gold investments. Now obviously these are paid advertisements. So on my channel, there's no paid advertisements. You shouldn't be seeing any commercials. Okay, this is not a monetized channel. Now, I do have some gold investments, right? I've invested in some gold funds. I'm not even going to tell you the name, right? Because I'm not like trying to promote them or anything. But I'm just kind of giving you that as a frame of reference, so that you know my background. Also, my background is accounting. Okay, I did accounting for many years. About 15 years ago, I think I finished off as my last position was a chief financial officer for an import-export company. Okay. So I think I got into it about maybe a year and a half ago. I got involved with investing in a gold fund. And it's done very well. I think I'm at least 50% up on it. I am looking for an out at this point, right? Because I think that we're in a gold bubble, okay? And I think that for reasons I'm going to explain, I think the price of gold is going to come down because it's gotten up so fast in a relatively short period of time. So let's talk a little bit about gold. First of all, I mean, why do people invest in gold? They say, hey, historically gold's done very well. They say that, hey, it's been used for a currency for whatever thousands of years. First thing, let's say, is you can't eat gold, okay? And it's not very useful for making tools or weapons, right? So it's not something that can be immediately used or directly used for eating and for making tools and weapons. So it's pretty much something that you trade with, and people have to value it in order for it to have any value. Okay, so why do people value gold? I mean, historically they valued it because for artistic reasons, like originally because it was something that they could melt, right, and then they could basically do art with it. So then it started taking on some religious significance, right? Because again, it was something that they could use in temples and stuff like that. And then it became a currency, right? People were using it as a currency, not the only currency, but it was used as a currency. So the thing to understand what gold is, you can't eat it, you can't use it for most tools. A lot of people say, hey, there's a limited supply of it, right? And they'll say, hey, it doesn't rust, so all the gold that was ever mined is still in existence, okay? But one of the things that people don't a lot of times forget to point out is that the earth is full of gold, okay? When the earth was formed, all the heavier metals formed towards the center. So the more they dig into the ground, the more they mine, the more gold they're going to find, okay? And the mining companies are in control of how much gold is released into the market and when, okay? So unless you own a mining company, okay, gold is not something you have control over, okay? So yeah, that's an important thing that people a lot of times forget, that the earth is full of gold. I mean, the way gold was formed is when like large stars, like I think like maybe 100 times the size of our sun, when they go supernova, right, the inner core explodes into the outer surface, right, into the outer crust, and that pressure creates the heavy metals, okay? And it's basically scattered all over the universe, and a bunch of it basically settled on the earth, and just because of the way gravity works, it pulled the heavier metals towards the center. The reason why the earth has a magnetic field is because the center is full of like molten metals, basically, right? Melted metals that are rotating, and they create a magnetic field. Okay, so that alone, the fact that we have a magnetic field, tells you that there's a lot of metal in the center of the earth. Okay, so earth is full of gold. The mining companies are the ones that dig it out, and they decide how and when it's going to be released into the market. Not you. The governments may have a say on this, right? So at various times, the government has more say or less say. Given that it's something that the government kind of sees as of strategic value, I think it's a fair bet to say that the government has a lot of influence over what the mining companies do with the gold and how often it is released into the market, etc. Okay, and there might be agreements or demands that some of it, maybe these mining companies are paying their taxes to the federal government in the form of gold. I mean, we don't know that. Okay, the word is that the Federal Reserve has not increased their gold reserves. They keep it static. Okay, but who the hell believes what the Federal Reserve says and what they actually do? Okay, so and the reason why they supposedly keep their gold reserves static is because they don't want people to believe that gold has any value, right? Because it's sort of like a competition between the money that the government produces and the gold. So they want to have gold, but they don't want people to think that the gold is more valuable than the money that they're floating out there. Okay, so that's another aspect to this. Okay, so again, I'm just giving you things to just have in the back of your mind, think about. Yeah, when it comes to gold, just be aware there's lots of gold in the earth. You're not in control of the mining of it. Okay, and the government probably has a lot more control over that than you do. And plus different countries around the world like China, Russia, they're in the process of mining more gold, right? But yeah, again, things to consider. Okay, so what I want to talk about now is using gold as a currency reserve or using it to back money. Okay, so a lot of times you'll hear people say the United States should go back to using gold as a currency reserve. So first of all, how was that established, right? Supposedly established back in the 1930s. Well, U.S. government passed some law where basically they confiscated everybody's gold. Okay, so they tried to gain a monopoly over the gold. So right there's a red flag for you. Okay, the government is the one in control of the gold because they have the most guns. Okay, so one of the things to be aware of, like they've taken it before, they can take it again. Okay, now back when supposedly the money was backed by gold. Okay, first of all, it was never truly a 1-to-1 ratio. Okay, so it was never truly backed by gold. The government was the one that decided what the ratio would be. They were the ones that decided what the price of the gold would be, right? So, and I don't remember the actual numbers, but supposedly they paid people for gold, right? They forced people to give over gold to the government. They gave them a certain price for it, and then they repriced it at a higher price so that they could create more money. Okay. So at any given point in time, the government can take the gold away and they can say how valuable it is. Okay, so and they've done that in the past. So again, these are the flaws with gold. Okay, or trying to use gold as the main determinant for creating or valuing money. Okay, now let's talk about how money is created in our system. Okay. So the way money is created is before even the Federal Reserve, right? Even pre-Federal Reserve, you give something of value to the bank, right? Either you bring gold bars, right, or gold nuggets to the bank, all right, or you give them the deed to your house, okay, all right. So you give something of value to the bank, and then they give you a receipt for that valuable thing that you have given to the bank, okay? But now this receipt that you have, you're able to chop it up into little pieces and you're able to trade it, all right? So you give something of value to the bank, either gold bars or the deed to your land, right? And then the bank gives you a note, right? If you look on the money, what does it say? Federal Reserve note. So the bank gives you this receipt. Let's call it a receipt just to simplify things. If I say note, it gets a little confusing. So the bank gives you a receipt for the valuable thing that you gave to them that they have in their possession, either by physical possession or by deed. All right. So they give you this receipt, but then what you're able to do is you're able to take this receipt and basically chop it up into little pieces and trade it, right? And do business with other people. So if you take this receipt or this note that the bank gave you and you chop it up into little pieces, and then you use that to trade things or buy and sell things, what's that sound like? It sounds a whole lot like money, okay? So that's how money is created, right? And this is post Federal Reserve as well, okay? So nowadays, what do? You don't have a gold mine, so you can't bring gold to the bank and have them create money for you, right? So what you do is you give them the deed to your house or the title to your car, right? If you finance your car, and they use that to create money. And they do this at the local level. Like your local branch has the authority to create money if you give them something of value, like a title or a deed, okay? So what happens is you give them something of value, they create the money, right, electronically in the computer to give to you, right? They put it into your bank account, and then you have to pay them that back, right? In order for you to get back your title or your deed, you have to pay back the principal plus the interest, okay? So when the bank creates the money to give to you, all right, they create the principal amount, all right? So let's say you borrow, $100,000 from, let's say you borrow $100,000 from the bank, right? And let's say you take whatever, let's say a 30-year loan, but you gotta pay back the bank $300,000, right? So you borrow $100,000, but you gotta pay back $300,000. So where's this extra money going to come from, right? Because they're doing this across the board. Okay, everybody that, let's say, borrows $100,000, a 30-year loan, they all got to pay back $300,000. So basically the system would crash if it was not continually dependent on more people coming into the system and basically taking out these loans and creating more money, right? So next year, the next generation comes in, they all take out these loans, bank creates more money, they do business with you, and that's how you eventually, right, over 30 years are able to do business, make some profits, and pay back the $300,000 on the $100,000 loan that you took out, okay? So that's how it works, and it's irrelevant, completely irrelevant, whether that money was originally created by you either by digging up gold and giving it to the bank, right? In which case it would be gold-backed money, or whether you gave them the deed to your house and the bank used that to create money. In either case, we're using an asset, something of supposedly of value, to create the money, okay? So when individuals and companies, when we create money at our local banks, we're actually putting up a real asset, okay? And there's a limit to how much money we can create. And the reason is because, we have to put up a real asset. So, there's a limit to how much money we can create. The problem here is that the government is part of the same system, okay? So the government is part of the Federal Reserve System, right? They play in the same sandbox that we play in, okay? So the difference here is that when the government wants to create money, right, they don't put up an asset, okay? What they do is they kind of give themselves an IOU, okay? So there's no limit to how much money the government can create, the federal government, because they're not actually putting up real assets, okay? They're just basically, they're borrowing money or they're creating money, and instead of giving a real asset, they're basically telling the bank that, hey, we promise to pay you back. And they can continue to just run up these numbers into the trillions without limit, okay? Because the only limitation is the debt ceiling, which they continually vote to increase, okay? And to put things in perspective, 1 million seconds is about a week. 1 billion seconds is 31 years. 1 trillion seconds is 31,000 years. Okay, so the number trillion is an astronomical number. there's nobody in the universe that has $1 trillion to lend to the government. So this is just money that they're kind of creating out of thin air, or electronically creating in a computer, and they're using it to do business with the rest of us. So we have to actually put up real assets to create that money, whereas the federal government can just electronically create this money with this promissory note. In reality, what they're doing is they're just diluting the existing money. Okay, so when the government prints money, all right, creates money electronically, what they're doing, they're diluting the existing money. So what they're doing is they're reducing the value of all the money in circulation, which reduces the value of our money, right? So anytime the government does anything to decrease your buying power, they have in effect taxed you. Okay, so all this money printing that they're doing, raising the debt ceiling, every time they do it, it's a tax, right? It's just another tax on the people. One of the biggest frauds that the government has ever pulled over on the American people is telling them that this is just calling it debt. Okay, calling it debt. Saying that future generations are gonna have to pay it back. And a lot of Americans are like, yeah, future generations, you know what, I won't be around then, let the future generations pay for it. Okay, that's not what's happening. Okay, it's not future generations that are paying for this. We are paying for it right now through money dilution, the decreasing the value of our currency. Okay, now there's many countries around the world have tried to do this, and it only goes so far before the monetary system collapses due to insane inflation. The only reason why the U.S. government has been able to get away with it for so long is because we are a worldwide international currency. Okay, so when the U.S. government prints up money electronically, right, they're diluting the existing value of our money. It's not just our money; it's the world's money. Okay, and there's more U.S. dollars outside of the United States than inside the United States. Okay, so every time they print the money electronically, they are taxing the entire world. Okay, and that's the reason why the U.S. government can have something like, 20 aircraft carriers, whereas nobody else can have that, is because they're not just taxing the American people, they're taxing the entire world that's basically running on U.S. dollars. Okay, so that's the secret to the U.S. government's, worldwide power. Okay, it's not the nuclear bombs and the aircraft carriers. It's their ability to tax the entire world through money dilution, because everybody is using their currency, and they recognize this as their most powerful weapon, and they will do anything and everything to defend it. Okay, so something to keep in mind there. Okay, so drop some comments, let me know what you guys think, and I'll talk to you all soon.